between you and me, right where you are right in this moment, is exactly where you were meant to be. So, wherever that may be, just be.
To be a new you.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast.
Your permission slip to raise your standards and live an even more amazing life. Now, if you're feeling like that's way out of the ball game and you're really suffering with like pain in your body, guilt, shame, anxiety, depression, like these emotions run a lot of people's lives, and that's not by accident. Our culture is set up to keep us in those emotions because it's easier to control people when they're in those emotions. But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening. It's time to awaken, to bring all the parts of yourself back to this present moment and explore the joy that is your life when you live full out, fully expressed, fully harnessing the joygasmic potential of your body and yourself. Anything is possible, and especially we are here to tell you that deep and fulfilling love is possible and is available for you when you choose that for yourself. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and good evening as well. Welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. Today's guest is Jem Miner, LACMOAM, and a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, alchemical sacred embodiment coach, feminine power facilitator, and healing Tao instructor of internal alchemy, meditation, and qigong. The mother of a 7-year-old son and an infant daughter. Jem has successfully used Chinese medicine, Daoist alchemy, sacred sexual cultivation, dance, qigong, and somatic practices to renegotiate her relationship with the various traumas stored in her body, from early sexual abuse, rape, pregnancy loss, childbirth, and intergenerational trauma, to live a healthy, radiant, and fulfilled life, comfortable in her wholeness. She is passionate about sharing these practices with women who are ready to empower themselves in their own healing, liberate their true essence, and co-create thriving relationships in a culture ripe for change. Born and raised in Alaska, Jem is now joyfully co-creating a thriving family life with her partner in Asheville, North Carolina, where they homeschool, dance, and have many outdoor adventures in the Blue Ridge Mountains. You can learn more about Jem and Nourishing Academy Healing Arts at nourishingalchemy.love. She also has a free mini course, Embodying Courage in Challenging Times, a free Facebook group for all genders, thriving families embodying love in We Space, a free Facebook group for women, Thriving Beyond Trauma, and a handful of other beautiful offerings, including an online course, membership Thriving Mama Circle, an online community forum, a co-authored best-selling book, Awakening, Meet the Women Birthing to a New Earth, as well as several other offerings, all of which are linked in the show notes. I'm absolutely excited to welcome Jem today, and she will be joining us very shortly. Jem will be joining us shortly, and I was just reviewing her website in the moments in between, and there's this beautiful poem piece that I wanted to read to you. It says, "This is what I want to see in the world, for us to be comfortable in our sexual energy, which is our inherent divine connection to source energy, our essential co-creative power, to be able to live in it, with it, for it, through it, and let it nourish us, to let source bring forth our own creative impulses in art or music or writing or teaching, in all of our work, in love, for source energy to move unhindered through us, to make the world a better place. We need more people doing that, being empowered by source energy, to co-create a more loving, safe, sustainable world for us, for our children, and for generations to come."
Awesome. Welcome, Jem, to the Joygasmic Life podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. We've been chatting a little bit before we got on the recording, and I just found out that you and I have something in common, which is we both had children and then a big gap, and then you said you've got a 4-month-old, and I'm in sort of preconception, like, oh my God, I'm so excited phases. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that journey. Like, you've got this background in qigong and classical Chinese medicine. How did you get into all of those things?
Well, there's several aspects. Since I was a kid, I was into herbal medicine, and I grew up in Alaska, so we'd go fishing, and at some point I got an herb book, like a wild plant book, and so I'd catch my fish, and then I'd run off and study the plants, and that was my thing as a teenager. And I started getting into making different things, and in college I had a crew team injury. I hurt my back. It brought, like, not being able to move on my back, brought up lots of memories of early sexual abuse trauma, total breakdown. And that's what brought me into Chinese medicine, to meet my mentor in Massachusetts. And then I had a ghost point treatment with her that was 5 hours, and it, like, my back was better. The spirit came back in my eyes. It was magic. I said, this is what I'm here for. So I just dove into the Chinese 5 elements, and she sent me to the school here in Asheville, Daoist Traditions, where her teacher, his top students founded the school. And then from that school, which is a classical Chinese medicine school, which is different than traditional Chinese medicine school, or as our teacher, Jeffrey Ewan, calls traditional communist medicine, because they when they standardized Chinese medicine, they took all the spiritual stuff out of it. And so, like, the typical acupuncture channels and points, they work, they do the things, and but going back deeper into the classics, we look at more of the spiritual aspects of the points, and of looking at the points on the body, not just for healing pathology in the moment, but also for our spiritual evolution, and for opening up our deeper potential of alchemy, and of living into the fullest essence of who we are. And so that's been where my Chinese medicine journey has taken me. And then I've been studying with my mentor, Lita Herman, more in the last couple of years as well. And it's been really, really powerfully healing. And then I've also integrated that Chinese medicine, the study of the points and the herbs, and then I've gotten a lot deeper into qigong and the Daoist sacred sexual practices, doing internal alchemy work, jade egg, yoni massage and practices, and womb healing, breast self massage, and just integrating all of those pieces has been really powerful. And so that's the bulk of what I do now, is I support women in doing that deeper alchemical healing, both in person with acupuncture, and then also to be empowered in their bodies on their own by engaging in this kind of deeper self-care and getting to know their own bodies. So my focus, a lot of it has been on healing trauma, and having those tools brings us back into our power to be in relationship within our own bodies, so that we can create the lives we want to be living. And if we're not, if we're always relying on somebody else to, stick needles in me, or, do this shamanic healing thing, if that's something out there, then we're not really deeply claiming our power back, which is what's really essential for healing deeper trauma. And also, and not just for healing trauma, that was kind of my gateway into it, but also into creating the life we want to be living, and really offering our deepest gifts to the world and being our fullest selves, is to have that power in our bodies and be really aware of that.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so many beautiful things in what you said there. And I love how you're bringing, this idea of like like traditional Chinese medicine versus classical, sort of like how that spirituality is. It's nice to hear in some way that it's not just our Western sort of North American culture that's had that stripping away of spirituality
Right.
from the experience. It's like, oh, like, these other traditions have also experienced that. And it's unfortunate, but so beautiful to see that now you're bringing that, like the acupuncture, the herbs, as well as the energy work, as well as the sexual practices, to really bring women back to their wholeness, their center. And I love when I hear practitioners say that piece of, I can only serve you so far, and then it's really your job to continue to bring that energy back in, to even claim your power back from that individual practitioner and say, like, thank you so much for your wisdom and your guidance. And actually, like, I recognize that I'm the one doing the healing. What a beautiful,
Right.
beautiful gift that is for that individual. And I just absolutely love that. Um, wow, there's so much. Uh, the the Taoist practices is something that I've been really fascinated in, and I hope we mentioned we'll get to do the microcosmic orbit as an exercise later on in the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. Before we get into that, can you share with me a little bit about your understanding of sort of this like passing on traumas, this like ancestral traumas? Because you and I both have this passion for working with parents and with mothers to
Yeah.
help their families, to help, I say your family needs healing that only you as the mother can provide. And when we do that work, like radically different things are possible within family units. So can you talk to me a little bit about that experience of healing yourself to heal your family?
Yeah. So one thing that came up for me when my son was born 7 years ago, and I mean, I'd been a bit into all of this work. I was an acupuncturist. I'd done some of the jade egg work and internal alchemy practices, and I was like, I'm good. I've cleared my trauma. I'm all set. Guess what? So one thing that happens is that the womb it's this beautiful sacred storage container, and so it can hold powerful energy. It holds our essence, and it can hold a baby and give birth to that. But it can also be where women tend to stuff down all of the things that we haven't processed yet from this lifetime, from past sexual abuse or just past relationships that weren't healthy, that can get held in the womb. And then also in the ancestral realm, if you think about it, we were inside of our grandmother's womb when she was pregnant with our mother. And so there's all of the energies that were alive in our grandmothers got, held in our mother's eggs that were formed in that time, and then passed on into us. And so there's that aspect, but then there's generations of that too. And the research about intergenerational trauma that's coming out right now is fascinating.
Absolutely.
And so when my son was born, it took me, I think, I don't know, almost 2 years to realize I had postpartum PTSD. But something that happened in the birth was that as my womb was birthing this baby, which was a whole traumatic experience in itself with him, but it also was opening up all of this stuff that I hadn't been accessing, that I wasn't aware of before. And so on the one hand, there was the trauma of the actual birth. Then there was the trauma of I started tuning into some of the ways my nervous system responded. Like part of the sexual abuse was, as a little girl, I was awakened in the middle of the night. And guess what? Having a baby awaken you in the middle of the night was really triggering. And it took me 2 years to put those things together. And then I was like, oh. And so there was that piece where my nervous system just never really settled in those early months. First couple years of my son's life, he was a very wakeful, needy baby. And then when I started doing the deeper healing work, and in particular, well, for one thing, we processed his birth together. He got to cry and like
Mm.
told me about it when he was
Mm.
2.5, and he started sleeping better. And then
Wow.
a
Yeah.
couple months later, I started doing family constellation work. If
Fascinating.
you're
Great work.
familiar with
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
so there, like in my ancestry, there had been my great great grandmother was held under house arrest. She was Native American, and while the United States Army went and murdered her entire tribe,
Mm.
um, and so there was like so much of this energy of betrayal of, and like she was
Mhm.
safe because she'd married a white man. Here I was in a relationship with a white man. um, and there were just so many conflicting energies between me and my husband, and like that I couldn't even fully articulate, but it was
Mm.
on that level of the ancestral pain of that, of not knowing
Yeah.
who to trust, of having some guilt about that, of having just carrying on that pain. And so doing the family constellation work, um, my son literally started sleeping through the night that night. It was
I love
magical.
I love how that works. It's like you heal the energy, the kids improve. You heal the energy, the kids improve.
Right.
You're just
So
like, wow.
it goes both directions.
Hmm.
And then through that, I started diving deeper into how my body was holding
Mm.
those patterns, because it wasn't like, it's just okay, that's over and done. Like there was still more that needed to unwind
Hmm.
physically and energetically. And so I was diving deeper into the qigong and into the internal alchemy practices, um, and then also into the jade egg womb healing work.
Mm.
And that's where in the next couple years I got the clarity I needed to leave my marriage, to cultivate more of the kinds of relationships, first in friendships with other people that felt more aligned with what I wanted to be doing and
Yeah,
feeling and experiencing and being who I am.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then connecting more deeply with my current partner, who is amazing. And then we conceived our daughter just a little bit over a year ago, and it's been such a beautifully healing journey to get to be really happy in this pregnancy and
Mm.
postpartum. Like my postpartum was so hard with my son, and I'm
Hmm.
kind of like, what? I can be happy in this? This is amazing.
Right, right. I know. It's like watching the moms in our mom day calls just be peaceful and calm and well supported in their postpartum, like with loving partners and being able to just like stay in bed. They're like, "Yep, the only thing I've really done this week is like get on this call," and you're like, "Fantastic! That's exactly what you need to be doing." Nothing but staring at your beautiful baby, and it's absolutely brought back my like hope that I can have that experience, and it's beautiful talking to you too. You're like sort of a year ahead of where I'm at, and having recreated and brought this like healthy relationship that embodies so much more of what you're wanting, what I was wanting. It's like so
Yeah.
beautiful to hear that. So I'd love to hear more if you're willing to share about that birth story. Like if you could just give us some ideas, like what was so. I mean, obviously you've done a lot of work in the 6 years, 7 years in between, on yourself, on your energy, on that trauma. So then, what did that allow to be possible for your birth experience with your second child?
Well, some of the challenge of the first one was in my particular trauma pattern was in being really hyper independent, wanting to
Mm,
do all the things on my own, including
yep.
give birth.
Right.
And so I was in labor for 67 hours with my son,
Got it.
and in those 3 days, like my agreement with my midwife, and this was at home, like
Yep.
I wanted to have this beautiful home birth, um, but I only had somebody else in the room with me, like maybe maybe 8 of those hours total.
Wow. Yeah.
And guess what? Oxytocin is really important for giving birth.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. I mean, especially if you know somebody's in the next room or whatever, and you've got this sort of like elbows up, like nobody can help me. That like that fierce independence. I'm just imagining like that. I could totally see myself from
and
the past
I
being in
don't
that.
even know that it was that much. It was just like I had this kind of idealized vision of that in my head, and
Mm-hmm.
it ended up like she had to massage my cervix open because it wasn't opening. I had scar tissue,
Hmm.
and then I hadn't. I was. It was like I was using my qigong work to ground all this energy down through my legs. Also not helpful. It has to go through the cervix. There's only one way the baby can come out. And so at some
Yeah.
point she helped me. She was really clear, you need help now. And I was like, okay. And it became clear to me that I was just moving the energy around. Like it was too intense for me to go through my cervix where there was still this sexual trauma held.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I could open through that, he was born, an hour and a half later. However, he also was a large baby and had his shoulders stuck, and she wiggled him out, and he was maybe not alive for a minute. But he came around. I sang to him, and um, so that was like, on the one hand, it was really challenging, and on the other, it really opened up okay, I need to be able to ask for support. But in the partnership I was in, there was kind of this insular dynamic where he didn't want a lot of other people's energy in our home in that time, or support. Like it was complicated, but but I got the message that I needed to ask for support, but I didn't really know how, and I was still so
Yeah.
like my nervous system was so wrecked from that whole experience.
Yeah.
I couldn't even come up with the words to ask for the kind of support I needed.
Yeah.
So this
Aw.
time, um, it took years to figure it out. I mean, it took
Yeah.
several months of getting mastitis every time my husband went out of town, which was a lot
Mm.
in that first year.
Yeah. I've only had it once. It was horrific. I can't imagine getting it more than once. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so
Recurringly.
so this time I had I mean, for one thing, I'm with a partner who knows the depth of connection that I need, and also knows that he can't provide all of that, that I also need that
Mm.
with other women,
Mm-hmm.
which is really beautiful and so nurturing, to have a partner who gets that
Absolutely.
and really supports me in having those connections with women who will help me through the things that only women can do. Um,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and so, we had a doula who's a dear friend of both of ours. Um, we ended up going to the birth center, rather than being at home, because I just wanted more. I wanted more support, a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
support. And I had a
Yes.
lot more support. And because I had
Yeah.
had shoulder dystocia before, we had an extra midwife around. And it was amazing. I had somebody doing my hip squeezes while I was in labor for 22 hours. It was still an intense labor. 6 of those
Yeah.
were in transition.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
trying
Oh, just
not
so
to
much fun.
push. But
Yeah,
the
because of the
lesson
fear, right?
in
Yeah.
this birth was more like, really, like, the baby was in a little wonky position. And so it was more about getting really fully aligned before I could push. And once I
Mm,
pushed, it was 4 pushes and she was out, and it was
yeah.
magical and easy, and I didn't tear. And so my postpartum healing was so much easier.
Yeah.
And I got to have that feeling of feeling her head and pausing. I got really good at pausing.
Mm.
Like, trying not to push is an amazing practice. when your whole body is wanting to push.
Dive into that a little bit deeper, because one of the conversations we've had recently is this idea that like you kind of need somebody to support you to not push, because there is this like, I gotta get it out, like it's such an intensity. Tell me more about what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I think the way the baby was putting her pressure was right on my cervix, but it wasn't all the way open. So I felt, and it wasn't every wave that I felt like I wanted to push, but it was a lot of them, most of them, for 6 hours. But my cervix wasn't open. So if I pushed, it would have, like, my cervix would have started to swell. There were lots of challenging things, and it would have just been really exhausting. So my midwife was really coaching me through, if you have to push, really gentle, do the horse lips. I did a lot of horse lips. um, and just really short pushes, and just kind of letting my body do it, but not like putting energy into it, because I still had to arrange the baby a little better and open. So there was that opening, and then the deepening into, okay, here's the pathway that's open fully. Now you can push. But there were these beautiful pauses where I learned how to be with that energy so intimately, of feeling the urge to push, and just being with it, and knowing that like there was still more that needed to open and align first. And the metaphors for that in life are vast. Because how often do we push ourselves to do more than we're ready to do? And really pause and open and breathe and find that inner alignment first. And then when we're actually fully aligned and open, then we can push, and it's easy. So after all of that,
oh my
pushes,
God, like
she came out.
Have I ever had to learn that lesson the hard way through like years of trying to push things? And yeah, oh my gosh. And I'm having this like flashback just now to they say the way that you move through birth is the way you move through life afterwards. And just thinking about uh about my son's birth, I'm just putting this together right now here, right live with you, right? And how I had like maybe an hour or two of like really coached pushing, like this is what you should be doing, having felt fetal ejection reflex at home before we transferred to hospital and all of that jazz, and just being like, oh, like how much of the last 10 years of my life have been this like other people telling me this is what I got to do, I got to push through, I got to make the thing happen, I got to build my business in a fast, quick, efficient, blah 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 kind of way. It's just like, oh, I just saw it now, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, for sure. And so being coached not to push was really helpful.
Yeah.
And so that's, there's been, and this whole pregnancy, I got pregnant just a little before the pandemic, and I had all these ideas. I wanted to do qigong, like pregnancy qigong circles and all these things in person. Guess what? That didn't happen. And it was so good to just be with my body, to just be in the pregnancy. And I had such a beautiful, deepening relationship with my son in particular in that time, which I'm so grateful for now. We began homeschooling, and it has been the best thing in the world for us to just slow down, simplify, be home more, be more deeply engaged with each other. And so we've had and he adores his sister. Now he had all that extra special mama time, and now he gets to be this big brother who just adores his little sister, and it's the sweetest thing. And
so beautiful.
And so there are all these things that lined up in the universe that just supported me to go slower this pregnancy, and to be okay with doing less, to be okay with not pushing myself to do too many things that would have been depleting, and to really be with my body, and And the other thing that was fascinating was when I was pregnant with my son, I remember being really emotional, and supposedly it's hormonal. I had all the hormones this time. I was not that emotional. I was really happy for the most part. Like there were
Right.
some challenging things going on. There was a pandemic. Like I
Yeah.
was finalizing my divorce still. Um, there were challenging things going on, but at the same time, just feeling um, all of the healing work I'd done in my womb space in the past several years. Um, and then so what we do in the jade egg practices, the way I teach them, is we clear out the emotions and energies that feel stuck, and then we fill that space with the radiance that we want to be growing, so the virtues of the 5 elements. And so I just got to feel my womb expanding in its radiance, and it
Gosh,
was
that's so
so
beautiful.
powerful. And it was just such a different experience than when I was pregnant with my son. And with him, it felt like the unprocessed stuff was expanding.
Oh gosh. Oh,
So I was more
whew, no
aware of,
thanks. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and this was like the opposite. And it was just really beautiful and healing to get to be in my body in radiance, and in gentleness with myself and with my partner and my son, and in my work that slowed down a lot. And it was just really healing to have that spaciousness and allow it. Previously I probably wouldn't have allowed it, and the world kind of enforced it too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's been so much slowing down for many, all people. I'm not sure. Like it's just like it's a really big way. And yeah, it kind of feels like
And
for me, it kind of feels like that internal work I've done over the last 10 years has sort of like percolated out, and now the rest of the world is like going through that dark night of the soul thing that so many of us who have been
right.
on this path for 10 or 20 or 30 years, like doing that work to prep to hold space for those people, is like, oh, now everybody else is doing that. Not everybody, but a lot of people, like the call is there, right? And people are either
Right.
choosing to suffer or to gain tools and skills and abilities to deal with the intensity of energy and the processing that's being asked and requested. So, with those two differences in the pregnancies, like 22-hour labor is still nothing to, it's not like easy by any means. 6 hours of transition, not easy by any means. But what was, in that birth to postpartum, you said she's born, you've got this like 4 pushes and she's out. Once you've got that alignment, I'm curious first before we go into like the postpartum, like, in the first pregnancy, you mentioned sort of like using the qigong to like ground the energy around your cervix. What's your perception of the energy flow in your second labor, like aligning it with your cervix and aligning your energies? I'm just fascinated. I'm so curious.
Yeah, it was I was so present in my pelvic floor and in my cervix, and I could tell that she wasn't quite aligned, but that internal listening. And so in the intervening years, I was doing all these jade egg practices. I was teaching them and tuning into my body in that area all the time.
Mhm.
And so it was just really helpful to have that background, to have those skills, to be present, and to not be afraid of being present with my pelvic floor, and to feel like there was this urge to push, but it wasn't quite aligned, and so I could relax it. So there's the
Mm.
jade egg practices that are strengthening all of those muscles, but then there's also the relaxation,
Mm.
and so really tuning into what that felt like in my body, to be like my original jade egg teacher Minka DeVos talks about the pelvic floor being like a trampoline. We want it to be springy, so it has
Mhm.
that give and it can spring back up,
Mhm.
and it's a trampoline for the spirit. And so I remember tuning into that, that I could feel my pelvic floor and my cervix kind of opening, and then it was like I could feel them also kind of coming back up if it wasn't quite right to push
Mm.
yet. um,
Mhm.
and I was just really deeply aware of that whole region the entire time. It was really intense. and it was a lot easier because I'd had all this practice with the
Absolutely.
jade egg work. And then also with my partner, we'd done some yoni massage where he just held different points, where I had still been, while I was pregnant, where I had still been storing energy from my previous birth, um, and just being with those emotions really consciously too was helpful, in preparing for the birth, so that I could be there and it wouldn't be super painful. I mean, it was painful, but it wasn't like unbearable. I knew how to be with the emotions that were coming up, and I had enough people with me to support it,
Yeah.
and that I trusted and who felt really aligned and were really honoring my wishes. My midwives were amazing in just, asking before they did anything to my body, which is
Super
often
important.
not the case. And really making
Super important.
sure, and like I told them I didn't want to know how dilated I was, how far along I was, because I took so long last time. And so I
Yeah.
thought it would just be depressing. So they didn't tell me until I was like 8 centimeters, and then was hanging out at 8 centimeters for a long time. And it was really helpful to not know, and to just be with my body, and to not be trying to gauge progress by somebody else's, view of it, but just to really be in my body and be tuning into what my body needed. I needed a lot
Absolutely.
of hip pressure, squeezes, and to help her get into position, we did a whole bunch of different things, but it took a lot of conscious presence, being really aware of my body, and relaxing it, and relaxing it, and relaxing it. And because I remember with my son, I wanted to pull my energy up and away from my cervix, or like I would send it down through my legs, or I'd kind of pull up when it got really intense. But the only way out is through. And so I had to really come into that space, and this time I did that a lot better. And I was also more comfortable with asking for support with that, and just making eye contact a few times in particular with my partner, where I just felt his presence and his support so deeply.
Yeah.
Like it helped me remember that I could do that, and could keep keep staying present, and that there were these amazing people with me in that process.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. I have a better sense of the differences between those, and just the intensity of staying present with the cervix for any period of time, anytime, is like that's a journey in and of itself. Never mind when there's like massive surges of energy and birthing sensations coming through your body, right? It's like it's a
Right.
big deal. And
And
especially
most of
with
us are trained not to, right? Like,
yeah.
and my office mate, teaches pelvic floor physical therapy classes, um, and so one of the things, and I went to a group class, and a number of the women there just weren't even aware of whether they were contracting their pelvic floor or not. Like
Yeah,
just not, we don't have the sensation. And so I think having the jade egg practices, and not just doing them as exercises, like to gain awareness, but doing them with the spiritual practice of it, of noticing the emotions held, and then consciously using those exercises to bring in more of the radiance of what I wanted to be growing. It just made it's transformed my whole womb space, my, like, all of it. The womb that grew the baby, the vaginal opening, the whole pelvic floor, and just my relationship with that is really sacred and rich. And I think about what would be possible in the world if more women had that depth of awareness and presence, and
absolutely.
how rooted in ourselves it's possible to be when we have more of that rooted down in our bodies in this really sacred space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. I love all things vaginas and wombs and babies and birth and women. It's just like so magical, this like creative life force. Oh gosh. So I'm curious, we're moving through this birth journey, and you've given me this image of like connecting with and really aligning with that cervix. What was different for you, sort of in those moments after birth, and in those moments, maybe the first month or two after giving birth to your second baby? What was different for you, and what did you notice having done that work?
I mean, the first with my older child, the first couple of weeks after the birth, I literally, anytime that I managed to sleep, I was having nightmares about the
Mm,
birth, literally for
mm.
several weeks.
Oh gosh.
And I think I remember at my month checkup telling my midwife that um, like I'd finally slept without having a nightmare about the birth after a month.
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
so that was kind of my my nervous system was really on high alert, and having
Yeah.
um, and also I'd torn, and then my on the third day I was up, and I walked down a couple stairs into the sunroom carrying the baby, and I slipped a little, my stitches tore. And so um and then there was a little piece of my perineum that was continuing to tear for 5 weeks until I went to the doctor and had it cut off.
Oh
He's like,
gosh.
oh, it's just hanging on by a thread. And
Just shake that off.
yeah, so um which total anomaly, like not a common thing, but that's what happened because I
Yeah.
was moving around more than I should have been,
Yeah.
um, trying to do more than I should have been doing,
Yeah.
and so I was just really, I was in so much pain, and so there was like the birth stuff, then there was a wakeful baby, and then there was also the physical pain where it hurt to get up and go out of bed. And basically all of my self-care practices involve movement.
Got it.
And so
Yoga,
all of
like,
them
yeah.
hurt. I couldn't do
Oh,
qigong, I couldn't do yoga, I couldn't go on walks, like everything hurt. Just sitting up hurt. um
that's a good like note. Like if you're preparing for pregnancy, make sure you have some form of self-care practice that does not involve you having to move, because you're
yeah.
generally shouldn't be moving too much in those at least 2 weeks after birth, right? Gosh.
Yeah. So this time, I think all of the relaxing my pelvic floor, to not push, mm, helped me to not tear.
Yeah.
And um, and so for one thing, there was that my pelvic floor just was was in a much better place. Like it was barely painful at all. And
Wonderful.
and I still rested. I did not decide that meant that I could walk up and down the stairs every day. I still
Right.
stayed in bed.
Yeah.
I was bound and determined to stay in bed and rest and let my body heal and be really gentle. And I had herbal baths that I did for my perineum still, even though it wasn't, in such dire shape. Um, and I was just really gentle with myself this time. And I had a partner around who was really supportive of that. My previous
Mm.
partner had so much going on when our son was born. He was not available. He would be on calls for hours and hours on end,
Hmm.
um, and I didn't have somebody else that I could say, "Hey, can you refill my water?" Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just had a lot more support in place, and we arranged, more postpartum help. We had an easier meal train. It was also not in the middle of winter when my son was born. Like we had a lot of snow up in the mountains where we lived, and so it was harder for people to come visit or to bring us food and things too.
Yeah.
Um, so just being in a more accessible place for community to actually be supporting us helped
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But also I could just be I've cultivated more tools. I could do yoga nidra meditations lying in bed
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I just had more practices that I could do lying down, and I was okay with that. So much of
Mm.
it was about my own mindset being okay with it,
Hmm.
that I didn't have to get up and do things that we had food in the freezer, there's food being delivered, my son could come snuggle in bed with us, and it was just a lot more restful. But I had decided that I was going to do it that way, and my partner was really supportive and really clear. Like he rearranged his work schedule so that he could take breaks and come check on me in between clients when he started seeing clients again. And so there was just a lot more support.
Hmm.
And um, and I'm I'm not sure if it's, you know, just a different baby, or if it also has to do with how much more calm and peaceful I was in my body in the
Mm.
pregnancy. But this baby also sleeps. And having a baby that sleeps is very helpful. So we
Absolutely.
were sleeping, we were actually sleeping more than, I did get mastitis this time also because we were sleeping too much. And
Huh.
my breasts got too full. So,
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
but I dealt with it well, and
Mm.
um, but overall I just felt so much better supported, and I was okay with being supported. And
That's huge. That's so huge. Like that
right,
that is a completely transformational experience from I can do everything on my own. I've got this fierce independence to I am open and willing to receive support. I am encouraging it. I have created a container for that. Like that is a
right,
radical shift in worldview, how you're holding yourself, how you're showing up to your life and your baby and your birth. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I think
and
it's a
and
crucial one.
having a partner who's really supportive makes a world of difference too.
Absolutely.
And also, like there are the things we talked about beforehand, and then there are the things that we recalibrate. And so like he and I talk a lot about what it means to have a thriving family,
Mm.
and how we tend to the ecosystem, the emotional ecosystem, and the practical ecosystem also, but how we tend to the emotional ecosystem. And one of the things that's been really vital is that, I think, a little less than a month after Adiro was born, um, he started going on a morning mile walk every day, and
Mm.
it's so good for his energy.
Mm.
And so, like, on the one hand, there's, yes, I need my self-care and nourishment, and so does my partner, and so to just feel that mutual support is also radical.
Mm. Oh
um,
my gosh, yeah.
See the difference in what it does for his energy, to know he gets that movement every day out in nature. We live in a beautiful place, and for a while he was taking my son too, um, and so part of that allowed me some quiet time if they both went,
Hmm.
and also just to know that he's meeting his need for movement, for nature every day, so
Yeah.
that it's not building up, like, so nobody's getting resentful.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a healthy, thriving relationship is not a static thing. It's something that is an ongoing practice, an ongoing movement. It requires work and communication and both individuals, all individuals looking to meet their needs and then seeing how those can get met in the community of your family or your larger community for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and being connected enough, and tuning into each other enough to notice, okay, you need to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, like, I'm a little more resourced right now. I will take the baby and do whatever. Um,
Yeah. Teamwork.
and yeah, and so it's just a really different dynamic where there's that kind of tending to each other, and then also, he helps my son notice oh, your mom looks really tired right now. What can we do to help her? And so like my son will go fill my water bottle and bring it.
Mm.
And and then noticing my son needs what he needs too. And so we've had a lot of reading time together while the baby's nursing. We're, halfway through the fourth Harry Potter now since our
Right.
daughter was born. We've been reading them all a lot. And
Yeah.
and it's been really sweet to have that time with him and really connecting and making space so that he gets outside and gets to see, the couple friends in our little pod.
Yeah.
And but also that he gets mama time too. So it's not just all about the baby, but
Yeah.
nourishing our relationship, and being sure that he hears enough yes.
Mm.
There were a couple of weeks where we were a little more tired and there was a lot of no, quiet down, and he started
Mm.
to rebel against that. It did not go
Didn't
well.
work.
So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
recalibrating and finding the yes of, okay, here's this exuberance of energy, what can we do with that? and um and finding the ways that we all could find our yes and feel like it was actually a yes, not a real stretch that would be
Mm.
presented later.
Yeah. So important.
So it's a dance. And my partner and I met doing family constellation work, and then also in our dance community. So there's,
Okay.
we have that
Beautiful.
background of the contact improv of life also. That's really helpful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh gosh. I'm just so glad to hear sort of that story of transformation. Um, just the awareness of that journey, the process of that journey, the acknowledgement that it is a process, it's an ongoing dance, and even with all of those experiences and all of that transformation, like it's still a journey to figure out what the needs of this moment are,
Right.
how to balance all those needs at this moment. It's like, oh, it really is an ongoing, and like I love that you called it a dance. It's so beautiful. We're gonna sort of wrap up here and then move into membership content. So if people are interested in learning more about you, if and if they're interested in pursuing work with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you and to join that process?
So my website is nourishingalchemy.love, and there I have a free mini course that has a few of the qigong practices that I come back to every day, that are the first things that I teach my clients that I want all moms to know in particular. And so there's a free mini course called Embodying Courage in Challenging Times, and that's available on my website. And then I also have a larger course called Thriving Beyond Trauma, the Foundations of Sacred Feminine Embodiment, and that's available there. And that is going into the qigong work and a lot of the breast massage, self massage, and the jade egg practices. And it's really bringing together all of the things that I've done in the last few years, that have made this thriving life possible. And then my partner and I also have a free community forum. The larger one is thrivingnow.center. And so we're wanting a deeper engagement with people than we have on Facebook. We have our Facebook groups. I have a Thriving Beyond Trauma Facebook group. I have a Thriving Families Facebook group. But we're moving more energy into this forum that is ours, that is not bombarded by Facebook ads and all the
Yes,
other things.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's thrivingnow.center, or thrivingfamilies.center goes directly to the family-oriented part. So you can find us there. And you can also shoot me an email at gem@nourishingalchemy.love.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for anybody who is listening on podcast platform down the road, you want to engage and join in the membership content, which is what we'll be doing next, or if you want to see the video of Gem and I talking, you're absolutely welcome to join the membership in the note. The links for all of Gem's stuff, as well as that, will be in the show notes that are attached to this podcast. So beautiful. I'm excited. Okay, so I'm just going to pause We're gonna go like this, and we'll just keep going. Beautiful. So I have a couple, like, I'm curious. Number one, you have all this knowledge about herbs and you treated mastitis for yourself. So I'm just curious, like, what was your process for treating mastitis? Because I know that for me, it was like a really terrible experience and it comes with a lot of pain. I'm curious what your process was.
Yeah, I'm the first thing is the basics: sleep, skin to skin with the baby. um, I was told to nurse a lot on that side. It was so painful because the plug duct was right under that nipple,
Oof.
and which is how it happened because I couldn't even see that there was redness until it had expanded out beyond
Oof.
there. I just thought that she was latching poorly, which was part of it, but it was not the main thing. So I had to pump that side totally empty a couple times, and then my beloved friend, fairy godmother, came, and I had prepped herbal things that I might need before I gave birth. So I had
Mhm.
bags of things where I had, I think it was, well, there are a few things. I kind of alternated some different herbs, but I did a marshmallow root infusion, so making the tea of the marshmallow root and then just putting a compress, a warm compress of that tea on that breast, and massaging it. All the breast massage comes in handy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I also had a poke root salve that I was putting on, which you have to be careful with because it's poisonous. So you have to be sure you're not going to nurse the baby right after.
Right. Yeah.
But it was really helpful. And then I also was alternating with cabbage leaves and,
Yeah.
little potato, cold potato. And it was a whole ordeal, but it helped and it worked. And then I was also doing a couple homeopathics, Phytolacca, and maybe it was just that one. And that's what I did. I'd learned that from mastitis previously also.
Mhm.
And then focusing on being sure that I woke up often enough to breastfeed properly, and
Mhm.
adjusting the latch and adjusting the positioning of how I was holding the baby to nurse, and how I was holding her other times, because with my son, part of my getting mastitis was he wanted to be held upright a lot. He had reflux, and so he just wanted to be up a lot, and so I kept holding him up on my breast. So
Mhm.
his weight, he was massive. He was 19 pounds by 4 months old. And his weight would press on my breast. And it
Mhm.
took me a while to figure out that was part of what was just
Mhm.
compressing my milk ducts. And so being mindful about prevention is
Yeah.
really
Absolutely.
important. And just noticing, where the baby's putting pressure, if what you're wearing, how you're sleeping, how you're holding the baby, what's putting pressure on the breasts. And then I was so glad that I had compiled different herbs and
Mhm.
little bags, like, cook this for this ailment. So it was ready to go in the kitchen, so my partner or my friend could come over and throw them in a pot. um, and yeah, I highly recommend that new moms do that
Mhm.
before they have the baby. Get as much ready as possible.
Yeah.
And I did that with
Absolutely.
my placenta. Also, I had the herbs to cook with my placenta, ready to go, so it could just happen. And I forgot to mention earlier that I ate my placenta both times, and it was
Okay.
so helpful for the
Wonderful.
postpartum teariness. um, and my partner, my son's dad, could ask me. He would see when I was really a mess and just crying and couldn't do anything, and be like, "Have you had your placenta today?" No. And so he would bring me some.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we cooked it with organic orange peel and ginger and like I think half a fresh organic lemon, and some cinnamon, and then I added a couple Chinese herbs to nourish the blood too. And
Do
it's
you remember
delicious.
what those were?
Baishao, peony, and a little bit of licorice root, just a little bit, and guizhou is the cinnamon twig, um, and so that's kind of the harmonizing, a really simple harmonizing formula to nourish and kind of gently astringe the blood, and then also to balance the blood level with the wei qi, the defensive qi, which like with postpartum sweating and stuff, that can when you're sweating buckets, that can help to harmonize your body so that you still need to sweat to clear some of that fluid, but it helps to just bring back the integrity of the wei qi, and so we steamed the placenta with those herbs, and then sliced it. We made a tincture out of with the liquid from that we steamed it with, and some
Oh,
pure
cool.
organic grain alcohol, to use for menopause, down the road. And
Beautiful.
then
Oh,
we sliced and dehydrated the pieces, and then I just broke it up in little chunks, and I just ate them. It's too much work to powder and encapsulate, and part of the medicine in Chinese medicine, part of the medicine is the taste, is the flavor of the herbs.
yeah.
And because it was cooked with all these other yummy things, it tastes
Hmm.
really, really nourishing.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
really helpful both times. And I also didn't feel like I needed as much of this placenta. Like I
Mm.
wasn't as thrown off by everything, and I was sleeping more.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's the only meat that you can eat without killing anything.
Yeah.
It's a
Yep.
life-giving meat, and so
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, and the magic of the placenta.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that as like, yep, it's definitely like it's an organ. It's like eating liver or heart, but nothing has to die in order to do that, other than the state of you being pregnant. That needs to like come to a completion, right? Yeah, beautiful. And I just so appreciate that the sort of like this recipe and being like, oh, you could like steam and dehydrate. I thought of stews, I've heard of smoothies, I've heard of encapsulation, and I have a sense of like, oh, there's something really magical about like chewing it and the engagement with the mouth as well. Like so much of eating actually happens in the mouth rather than just in the stomach, and so chewing on it, I can see how that would bring a different energy to it.
It does, and it was delicious, and it felt good to me. And it also prolongs it. Like I know people who've made a smoothie like right away,
Mm,
or cook it in some, but then it's over and done with. And so this,
yeah,
like, I still have the tincture, but I also still have a bunch of pieces of the dehydrated placenta chips
yeah,
too, which I would recommend, tossing in the freezer so that they don't
yeah,
get moldy, just in case.
yeah, yeah,
um,
absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. And so I'd love to, we talked quite a bit about breast massage in the rest of the episode, and I'm curious, like, are you open to sharing one of those like mastitis breast massage techniques or something from that, or would you rather do the microcosmic orbit? It's up to you.
I mean, my breasts are pretty full of milk right now, because
Maybe not.
but I could do a little bit. I think, let's see. Um, so I am actually wearing a bra so that if I leaked milk, I would not,
Hmm.
spray it everywhere. um,
That's great. I'll do it along with you. We'll learn together. Well, you'll
yeah.
teach, I'll learn.
Um, so first of all, there we go. The breast massage that I teach starts by just tuning into your heart, and bringing your breath deep into your heart, and just noticing, first there's the quality of your breasts, that you can feel with your hands. And just noticing what they feel like. And this is easier, you know, it can feel nicer to do naked if you're on your own. And maybe with some coconut oil or something. But first, just tuning in to how your breasts feel to your hands. And then coming inside your breasts and noticing how your hands feel to your breasts, what it feels like for them to just be held. And to be held with love and appreciation for how they give life, how they give nourishment. And just noticing what they need. And sometimes we say that we just have to get something off our chest emotionally. And so just tuning in to what's being held in the breasts, in that tissue, in the heart. Noticing what wants to be released or what just needs to be seen and heard and accepted. And then you can gently start circling, just slowly. Try not to bump my microphone. And I like to invite people to just notice which direction feels more natural. And typically I'll go both directions, but sometimes one way feels more helpful than another. And so just gently rubbing. And then I'll usually do a little spiral. So the first part is with the whole hand. And, you know, this also depends on the size of the breast too. But, and then you can kind of switch to using like the pads of these 3 fingers. And just going around, spiraling in towards the nipple. And
I like it.
And if you're breastfeeding, then you might not want to do a lot of nipple stimulation because you'll just spray milk. But if you're not breastfeeding, then you can just gently go around the nipple and let the tip of the middle finger, which is the end of the pericardium, the heart protector channel, just dance around the tip of the nipple. And then just pause there and just feel that connection between the fingertip and the nipple. And it's activating all the glands. It nourishes our hormonal balance in the body, especially into menopause. And it's, you know, like the peak of a mountain. So the massage is kind of spiraling up the mountain and then coming to the summit. And then in Chinese medicine, we talk about, you know, tuning into heaven, you know, at the top of the mountain, or, you know, all the heavens around us, and tuning into what energy we want to be receiving from heaven, what we need, what we want to give ourselves in this breast massage. And receiving that message, just gently spiraling back down the opposite direction. First, just with the middle finger around the nipple. And just imagining that you're bringing that energy from heaven, from spirit, back down into the bulk of the breasts, into the valley of the heart. And gently massaging that in. And smiling into this sacred tissue that gives life. And then pausing, just holding the breasts, appreciating them. And then if you were going to do a jade egg practice, I would bring that intention from spirit and rub that down the valley between the breasts down to the clitoris, and then go into a jade egg practice. But if you want to stick with a breast massage, so that's just kind of the warm up to bring in the intention and just tuning what's there. And then you can do just gentle little circles with the fingertips. Some people like to do it with the thumbs on the sides, especially. Ooh, that's tender. I was teaching my son how to do push-ups the other day. So just noticing where the tender places are. And then if you had a plugged duct, you would want to be massaging that area and going towards the nipple. So you can do little circles. And just because if one spot gets backed up, sometimes there'll be other spots too. So I would go kind of all the way around, and then depending on where the plug is, you really do want to massage right on it. And sometimes doing this in the shower with and if you have an adjustable shower head to make it vibrate and be a little bit more intense, you can just do that with a shower head. Careful right on the nipple, but because you want to break up whatever's plugged in there. And then you want to be massaging towards the nipple. So you can do little circles, and then you can kind of circle towards the nipple, and then you can circle all the way around. And you want to be sure that you lift also, go under and massage up from under, and then also all the way back from like up into the armpit area. And just be sure that that energy is all moving. So coming towards the nipple all the way down.
Yeah, I can feel there's some spots that are kind of like tender. It's like, oh, like interesting. Probably they could use some more love and some more attention.
Yeah.
And so often women just think about their breasts as like, I used to say they're good for catching crumbs in boys. That was like my joke. And it's like, gosh, there's so many more uses, like nourishing babies. Like neither of those are the primary use of the breast.
Yeah. And so we actually in the Daoist practices talk about the breasts being like the upper kidneys.
Oh, interesting.
The kidneys are considered the batteries of the body. So the kidney breathing practice in my free mini course on my website has just a practice to recharge the kidneys. But doing breast massage is a way of recharging the upper kidneys, where we can, because this is where we tend to give from, so we need the deep resource of the water energy in the kidneys and the lower back. But then we also need to have this resource up here be replenished and full and vibrant. And when we're really loving this part of ourselves, then we have more available to share. And we can share that from a place of fullness and from a place of being aware of what our breasts are feeling like. Are they feeling held and appreciated and tended to? And it's also just really relaxing. If you have a hard time going to sleep, just a little gentle breast massage, and tuning into them can be really helpful. And then I also do abdominal massage around the navel. And before doing any jade egg work, I always have women start with the breast massage first. And so and I recommend that in sexual practices to start with the heart. So the breasts, are nestled right up here, and they have all this heart spirit energy in them, and that's not always been people's experience. They're like, lots of women have had lots of unpleasant experiences with their breasts, or just weird associations from, past lovers, or what attention they did or didn't get, or, if they feel nourished in themselves, because the breasts are about nourishment. And, if we didn't feel nourished as kids, or if we don't feel nourished as mothers, or just as women, as who we are, then we're not going to be able to nourish others as well either.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So really, taking time to tune in and appreciate them is so helpful. It helps to reset the nervous system. It helps to just feel more vibrant and beautiful too, and kind of reclaim that relationship with this part of ourselves. And I, preconception, I think doing a lot of the breast massage and jade egg work is really helpful. Because once you're pregnant, then sometimes there's a lot more sensitivity, and it's still helpful to do, some of the massage and really tune in to the energy there, and just get more comfortable with your body before you give it over to this baby. But if people can start in preconception, that's really ideal, to start nourishing the breast and womb space in preconception, and notice if there's any negative energy that's being held. It's really easy to move it from the breast tissue. A lot easier than from the womb. And
Absolutely.
breasts are more like kind of daily, they tend to be more daily life stuff. The womb tends to be the deeper ancestral stuff, or, earlier childhood trauma things. But the breasts are more like, we're stressed out. we need to move this energy and come back into a state of abundance in our essence. So yeah, that's a little overview.
Thank you. And then obviously, you go into much deeper detail with this in your courses and in your membership in your group and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go check out your free course on the energy stuff. I'm really excited about checking that out. And yeah,
so in that free course, on my website, I also have a healing sounds meditation that works with the 6 healing sounds of the Daoist practices that go with each of the organs. And so a lot of what I do is combining the healing sounds with the emotional energies that we find in the breasts, in the womb, and then using sound and breath work to help move the energy that's stored there. So you could even do, if you learn the healing sound meditation in the free mini course, then you can start applying that to the breast work as well. And that would be a really easy just intro to noticing what emotions are held there, and bringing in more of what you want to hold in your breasts and to grow and to feed your babies with. Oh, I don't know where you went. There you are. Okay.
Yeah, we had a little bit of, I'm here. There was a little bit of lag in the video, and I'm like, I'll just turn that off so we can come out. Well, I'm so grateful for your time today, Jen. It's absolutely just like wonderful to connect, and I hope you'll join us on one of the Mom Day calls if you feel inspired to do that. And yeah, I'd love to have you back on a podcast to dive in deeper on any of these topics. They're all really fascinating, and I can tell this is like just the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
there's a lot.
yeah. So let's wrap it up there for today, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
Best wishes.
Thank you so much for listening to today's interview with me. There is so much more waiting for you. If you would like to access the bonus exclusive membership content, which includes the finale of this interview and some really exciting exercises, then please head over to bulletproofmoms.com/member, which will allow you to access not only the end of this interview, but also the video format, which has some really interesting visuals that don't make it through the processing in the audio, as well as the end of this interview, as well as bonus meditations, brain training tracks, and access to our online school, which includes courses like Relationship Reset, Circles of Commitment, How to Save Your Relationship and How to Save Your Marriage, marriage, how to make intelligent decisions as a single mom when you begin dating again, and many other courses, including the Joygasmic Birth course, your complete guide to creating a joyful, ecstatic, pain-free and pleasurable birth. And you will also get to see the really silly dance that my son is doing in the background of me talking in this video. So I absolutely encourage you to join the membership. It is pay what you want, and there is a wide range of payment options available. So if you are on a limited income, absolutely do not think that cash is a barrier to your ability. I'm sorry, I'm barely being able to keep it together because my son is just doing the silliest dance, and it's totally worth it to upgrade just to see how ridiculous he is. I absolutely love you guys, and I'm so grateful to be able to make this content available for free. And thank you so much to everyone who is already subscribed as a member and who allows me to continue doing this wonderful work and being of service to you all in this way. Thank you so much for your support. And the credit song from the beginning of the podcast is from a beautiful friend of mine who I met in La Cruz de Guanajuato. Well, La Cruz de Guanajuato. La Cruz de... How does it go again?
Mom, it's La Cruz de Guanacaxli.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that one. Oh my gosh. I used to think of it as La Cruz de Guanacaxle, but that's not how you pronounce it. It's really a terrible pronunciation. La Cruz for short, which is near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and he's an absolutely incredible musical artist, so please go check out Sonny, Sonny, and his work on Spotify. There's also links to that in the show notes. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the membership. Alex, you want to say anything before we go? Oh yeah. It's important to be silly, and you can claim your silly back. We've got classes coming out on that too. Mwah. So if you're still here and you're still listening, obviously there is some more engagement that you would like to be a part of. Please head over and join the membership. The link is in the show notes. So much love to you.